Hello, and welcome to my channel and this new series, the series that I created called Journey to Med, where I'm trying to help prospective medical students achieve their dreams by getting an offer, or offers, that's even better, to UK medical schools. And so today I will be talking to you about I think one of the first step and one of the most important steps as to how to get a medical school offer in the UK, which is work experience. This is, in my opinion, the first thing that prospective medical students that are seriously considering applying for medical school that should be doing. And it's arguably the longest step of the process. I created a list of questions that I wanted people to answer me when I was doing my own work experience. And I think just general questions that could give you a gist and an understanding of work experience and what is it and what should I be doing and am I doing too much, am I doing too little, all of these little different things. And as always, if you feel that one of the questions has not been answered and you really want to have the answer, you can always leave a comment down below or go out on my Instagram, leave a DM there. And if there's a lot of different questions that come back, I could also potentially think about doing a live or things like that to help you, because my goal is really to help you, and I will do my best to help you to the best of my abilities. Okay, so now that all of this is in the way, we can actually get into the video and I will try to answer the questions. Okay, so the first question is, what is work experience and what kind of work experience exists? So for me, work experience is anything you can do at your level, if you're in year 10, 11, 12, all of the different things that you could do to dip your toes into the medical or the healthcare field. And this can include a broad range of things. The most common ones could be doctor shadowings, nurse shadowings. You could also do some volunteering, which can also show that you care about other people and you're willing to use your precious time to help other people and to make their days a little bit brighter. But also this could be a job in the healthcare field and so many other things that are not directly tied to the medical world, but that could still work very well for your application. Okay, so the next question is, why is work experience important for prospective medical students? So for me, work experience is extremely important for medical applicants because it actually gives you an extremely good idea of what being a doctor really is. You can have the positive sides, the negative sides. You can, especially if you're shadowing a doctor or a nurse, you are really into the atmosphere and you really can understand what being a doctor is, because being a doctor is not like being a doctor on Grey's Anatomy or all of the other medical shows. It's completely different, and it's important that prospective medical students really understand this from the get-go so they know what to talk about at interviews, they know what to say on their personal statements, but most importantly they are able to auto-reflect and realize what they're getting themselves into and understand what is it that they really want to do. And for me, it's a really big opportunity for you to understand, really understand what you're applying for and what you're going to work towards. The next question is, when should you start your work experience? So for me, I think that work experience, as I said in the beginning, is the longest process of them all, because you can never have too much work experience. Because if you have a lot of work experience, it just means that you're going to have the ability, the choice, and the freedom, the liberty to choose. Oh, there's a lizard outside. Sorry, I got sidetracked. So as I was saying, the work experience is the longest part, in my opinion, of the whole process, because it could last years, it could last months, to the very least a few weeks, but usually it's something that is like set over the years, over time. It's a long period of time. So to answer that question, it's never really too early to start work experience, because for example, if you're volunteering, you're not going to only be volunteering for a month, because that, in my opinion, would just, unless you have literally no time, but it would just show that you're just doing it just to have it in your CV or whatever and say, okay, I ticked the box. But how does that really show that you're caring? You have to have sort of like a long period, maybe 6 months, to show that you were determined, you were disciplined, and you went back every single week or every single month to help and to care for other people. But then also, like, usually if it's work experience in the medical field and you're shadowing doctors, it's never going to be very long, but you have to make the most of that time. And other questions will answer what you have to do during that time. But, you know, again, as with everything in life, it's not the quantity, it's the quality and how you use that experience to portray your interest and your passion for medicine. So yeah, I guess that would answer it, but it's never too early to start. The next question is, do you need to have work experience in the medical field? So to answer this question, I think it's a pretty difficult question to answer because I think that every different university in the UK will have their criteria. I haven't checked all universities to have a very strict answer, but I really urge you to go look through the requirements, the entry requirements for your universities. Don't only look at the grades, also look at all of the non-grade stuff like work experience. Of course, it helps to have work experience in the medical field, especially for you, so that you actually have a very specific idea of what it is that you will be doing, what it is that you'll be studying, and what it is that you will become in like a decade or so. And it's really good to like, you know, reflect on the positives and negatives, as I said before. But it is not necessary. You can have work experience in a lot of different fields and still acquire some understanding of what it could be to become a doctor, but most importantly, you can acquire skills that could be very useful in a job as a doctor and in medical studies. And these are known as transferable skills. For example, if you would work as a like teacher assistant, or if you volunteered in a place that takes care of children, then at that point of time, you are learning skills such as patience, which is important as a medical student. You're learning how to communicate effectively with people that are younger than you, that have a different understanding of things, and you have to simplify everything you explain for them to understand things. And that's exactly the same thing when you'll become a doctor, you know? You're gonna have to explain to patients sometimes very complex things, but with very simple language so that they can fully understand what's going on with them. So I really, really think that it's not necessary. It's good to have it, but if you really don't have access to it, you can make an effort to do other types of work experience, other jobs, volunteering in other areas that will give you the skills that you can demonstrate that are important for being a doctor. You know, you can do other types of research around the topic of what it's like to become a doctor. You can also, you know, ask a friend that has a parent that's a doctor and ask them what it's like, and understand that, from my research, I've understood that being a doctor is hard for these reasons, and it's amazing a job for these other reasons. And it requires all of these different skills that I actually have and developed because of my work experience that's not in the medical field. I hope that you get me. I hope that you followed. That was kind of a little rambly question. Rambly? I'm not too sure how you say that, but well. So the next question is, what work experience have I done? So I think that it's important that I talk to you about my work experience so we can kind of give an example of what you can do. I have done quite a few, and that gave me the liberty to pick and choose the stories that I wanted to talk about. But by all means, what I've done is not a model. It's not something that you need to emulate to get offers. Not at all. Everybody has their own journey, their own story, and that's what makes, you know, applying for medical school, talking in the personal statement and interviews so unique to each one of us, because we all have different journeys. This is just an example of what someone could do. So for me, personally, I have done 3 doctor shadowings, so one in OBGYN, so obstetrics and gynecology, one in orthopedics, and one in cardiology. And then I think all of them were like around a week or so of doctor shadowings. Then I did some work experience as well in a lab, in a scientific lab, just to see the profession of a scientist and understand if I wanted to become like work in labs, like, you know, that also work in hospitals but be on the lab side of things, or if I wanted to become a doctor. So I really had both of both ends of the spectrums, and I could be like which one corresponds to me the best, and being a doctor is definitely the one that corresponds me the best. And then I also did some volunteering in a children's ward in a hospital with mentally impaired children, and that was I think that I did that for 6 months, once a week for like a few hours, and I was like helping a teacher there teach the students. And you see, it's not what I did there was not directly linked to medicine, but even though I was in the healthcare environment, I was actually developing new skills. Really, I developed patience. I developed communication because, you have to find new ways to communicate with these children's, oh. Yes, so you have to develop new skills with these children, such as patience, such as communication, because they don't communicate the same way as we do, and so it's important that you find new ways to communicate with them. And also teamwork, you have to work. I had to work with like the teacher, so things like that I can show, even though I wasn't directly with the doctor at that point, but I can show that I've understood the qualities that are required to become a doctor and become a good doctor, and say, okay, I've done this work experience in this volunteering ward, and I've been able to develop these skills, and that's how I did it. So I think that's maybe a good example to talk about. I also did like a research project with one of those doctors, but I kind of did it like as something that I was kind of interested to see how it was to do a research project that young, because I started when I was 17, and it was pretty difficult for me because I had to mix a lot of different things, school and all of that. But honestly, with reflection, if you're not applying to very like traditional schools, research project is not the most important thing. It's not. You don't have to do it, really. Do it if you're interested in it. That's definitely something that could be a bonus on your application, but don't do it because you feel that you have to. You don't, for most schools. Again, check with your schools if that's something that they would need and that's something that would give you a really big head start. But if it's not and you're not really interested, don't do that. Just continue like honing and developing your skills in the work experience with your other work experience. The next question is, should I prepare anything before my work experience? So that's something that I've never really seen online when I was actually applying, and in my opinion, yes. Yes, you need to prepare things before, because you are entering in a world that you do not understand. You'll probably be 16, 15, mostly like 16, 17 by that age, and you don't understand the terminology that they're doing. You're just there. You kind of feel like an alien at some points, but usually the team is trying to make you feel comfortable. But if you're there and you don't understand anything, how are you going to be able to grasp certain things and be able to talk about them later on in your interview? You can't really. So you have to make a little effort before to prepare like kind of a little notes, about what are the main things that the doctor you're going to be shadowing is mostly going to talk about. So for example, if I look here, what I wrote on this document is that for my cardiology shadowing, I prepared, and that was actually an idea from my mother, and listen to your mothers because they usually have good ideas. And I remember that she told me to just prepare a little document on, the most important terminology in cardiology so I could understand a bit more. And so in this document that you can see now, I wrote notes on all of the basic things that I needed to fully understand during the consultations that I was going to be observing. So for instance, I reviewed the basic anatomy of the heart and then a handful of the most common diseases and heart conditions. So this doctor was mostly dealing with patients that had CAD, so coronary artery disease. And so I kind of looked into that, and when I arrived in the consultation and he was talking about the different ventricles, the atrium, and all of the different things, I kind of had a better idea, and I was like, okay, yeah, I know what these are, and I can understand what he means. And so that was a really big head start, which means that I could actually understand what the doctor was saying when he was saying it. But then also, it's really important to understand that this document is a dynamic document. That's how I'm going to name it. It's a dynamic document. It's not a document that's set in stone. You will probably work on it just before your shadowings with the doctor, and it can evolve. If there are things that during the placement you do not understand, write them down. Write a note. If the doctor has ever a little bit of time, you can always ask him or her, what does that mean? Can you explain to me? I didn't fully understand this. But if the doctor doesn't have time, you can go back home that night and make some research and add it to your document. So you are actually constantly learning what's going on. So not only are you understanding what being a doctor really is during these placements, but you're also learning and developing your knowledge. And, who knows, maybe that you're going to do a shadowing in cardiology and be like, oh my God, that's so interesting. I want to become a cardiologist, things like that. And if you didn't understand a word, you might not have had this epiphany, you know what I mean? And this actually leads me to my next point, which is my next question, which is, what should you do while you are doing your work experience? So to answer this question, what you should do while you're doing your work experience, so I kind of already touched on this a bit with your dynamic document. Anything you don't understand, just write it down, continue adding to your document so you can learn new things. That's always an important thing, and it shows that you're also interested, you know what I mean? But the most important thing that you need to do, like, this is not a joke, like, you really need to do it, and it's going to save you so much precious time, is the fact that every single day you come home and you write in another document your reflections on the day. Your reflections can be anything from, oh wow, I don't like this aspect of medicine, I don't like this. Oh wow, the doctor did something that I didn't fully understand, and he or she wasn't explaining it correctly, and that maybe just demonstrates to me that it's important to realize that doctors have very specific terminology, and that it's important to know how to simplify them so the patient can understand. This can also be reflections on patients that were very touching to you, that were very stressed, and you saw how the doctor was able to calm their nerves and explain to them what was going on and what were the next steps. This can be things you observe from nurses. This can be things that you observe when there's no patients around and what the doctor is doing. This can be anything that sticks to your attention, anything that you find interesting, anything that touched you, anything. Just write it down. Like, even if you're never going to use it, write it down. It is so important. It will make you gain so much time if you do it, because during the rest of the steps that will be mostly when you're in year 13, like the interview process and the personal statements, you will have to talk about these experiences. But people and like the admissions team, they don't want to be like hearing a list and be like, okay, I did a cardiology placement, then I did an orthopedic placement, and I did an OBGYN placement. Yeah. No, they don't want to hear that. They want to hear, like, I did a cardiology placement and I saw this patient that touched me so much, and the patient was so stressed, and the doctor was able, with like calming words and soothing words, to empathize with that patient, show compassion, and the patient came out of the room feeling relieved and felt that he or she knew where they were going, and knew that if they did these steps, they would feel better. And so you vividly saw like the shift of energy in the patient's body when they came into the consultation room and when they left. These are the little stories. Or if you saw a patient that was so distressed, came in crying, extremely stressed, and left calm, you have to be like, oh, there's something going on there. Like, how did the doctor play some magic? Things like this. Or if you saw that, the doctor and the nurse, they work really well together, and they work like they belong together, and the work is so efficiently done, then you're like, okay, being a doctor involves a lot of teamwork, and this is how I observed it, and this is amazing. Like, I never knew it would involve that much teamwork. Things like that. Things that appeal to you, that will make the story personal to you. You need to write them down, because then it will allow you to talk about them with more details, with more emotions, when you're in the interview process and the personal statement process. And this will mean that you are gaining time, because you don't have to, imagine you do your work experience in year 12 or in year 11, and you arrive in year 13 trying to write your personal statement or trying to prepare for your interview questions, and you have to remember what happened 2 years ago. You're never going to have that level of detail. Your brain is not going to remember that. You have a lot of other exams to do that your brain is never going to remember that much detail. So it's extremely important that you reflect on these things. Don't just write, I saw this. Write, I saw this and I felt this. I saw that and that made me feel like this. I saw that and I understood that. You have to reflect on it. That's what the admissions team wants to see. They want to see that you are able to think, and you are able to, auto-reflect on things that you see. And that's extremely important. I think that to wrap up this video, it's really important to say that the reflections that you have on your work experience have to be true. They have to be what you really felt, and you cannot just invent things to think that they're gonna seem like, something that people want to hear. People don't want to hear what you think they want to hear. You know what I mean? People want to hear what you have to tell them, what's yourself, like what you felt. And people and interviewers and people that read your personal statement usually are able to see if what you're saying is true to you or if what you're saying is just said to make you look good. Because in interviews, they can see your emotions and they can see your eyes light up when you talk about a new concept that you love. So it's really important that you be true to yourself and be true to all of the other people around you with your stories and your reflections. So I guess that this wraps up this video. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for future videos about the BMAT, the UCAT, the personal statement, all of the other steps to become a successful medical applicant. So I guess I also just wanted to end on the note that I created this channel really to really help medical students achieve their dreams and to help them have a journey that's smoother if they don't have access to other types of help elsewhere. And so if I was able to help just one person through this video, I think that my job here is done. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.